Hello, everybody. Bob Garino here, also known as Reggie Van Gearshift. If you're wondering about that name, you can take a look at my first broadcast a month or so ago, and I'll explain in detail. I was a Ferrari dealer in Cohasset, Massachusetts, a small town about 20 miles south of Boston, for some 30 years. Incredible time, a lot of adventures, a lot of trips to Italy, a lot of interaction with the factory. And I decided to memorialize it all in a book I wrote, published last year by McFarlane and Company, entitled Let Me Sell You a Ferrari. It outlines my life as a Ferrari dealer. So today's broadcast is about one of the stories in the book. So what happened is the book was too long, the manuscript, so the publisher recommended that we take out a few stories, abbreviate others. So the reason for these broadcasts is to kind of fill in some of the blanks. And today's story is about the Berlinetta Boxer. Berlinetta Boxer was a flat 12 engine car, originally introduced as the 365 GT4 at the Turin Auto Show in 1971. 365 was the last Ferrari 12-cylinder that used the old nomenclature with the numbers representing the displacement of one cylinder, and then the configuration of the engine would be the second part. In 1972, 1973, Ferrari was bringing in two 12-cylinder cars to the United States. One was the 365 GT4, the Daytona, a famous one, also available as a Spider, a convertible, a roadster, and also the 365 GT-C4, which was kind of a 2+2. Not really, the rear seats were pretty small, but a great car, great engine, great sounds. And those two cars were discontinued in 1973. And they were replaced by the 365 2+2 and the Berlinetta Boxer. However, neither of those cars were destined for the United States. The factory decided that it was too expensive, too cumbersome to meet the safety and emission requirements, so they didn't bring them in. So after 1973, there were no more 12 cylinders coming in from Ferrari. And the dealers were very disappointed in that, and so were the customers, because they loved the cars. Loved the performance, loved the sound, loved the aura. A couple of years later, 1974, 1975, we started to see a few of these cars being advertised for sale in the United States, even although it was not legal. So what had happened is they were brought in, and then they were federalized. That was the term that we used. And they were brought up to either the safety and the emission standards, and then they were able to sell the cars, to merchandise them. But very, very seldom. So in 1977, Fritz, my partner, my Swiss partner, myself, we were looking at, gee, maybe we should do that. Well, the 365 had been replaced by the 512 BB. The 512 was the first 12-cylinder Ferrari to change the nomenclature on the cars. It was no longer, the 5 didn't represent the displacement of one cylinder, it represented the displacement of the engine. So it was a 5-liter engine. The 512, the 12 represented the engine size, and then the BB was the configuration. This car had a little more power, so if you federalized it, it wouldn't lose as much as a percentage. It sounded a little more attractive. So we decided to investigate if we could get one in Europe and import it and federalize it, and et cetera. So the important thing at the time was the strength of the dollar versus the European currencies. So we looked at the French franc, we looked at the cars in France, we looked at cars in Germany and Swiss franc and German Deutschmark. But the most attractive currency conversion was actually from the Italian lira. So that's when we thought we would see if we could find a car in Italy. So concurrently, in 1977, I had decided to go to Europe and to visit the factory to check on a specific car for a very good customer of mine, Pete Wensberg. Now, the first 308 GTBs were fiberglass. There was rumors going around that they were going to change to steel bodies. He really wanted a fiberglass car. So I offered to go to Europe and the factory and check it out for him. I decided to buy a BMW 630 CSI Coupe We were BMW dealers, and BMW had a great overseas program. Ferrari had an intermittent overseas program, but in any case, the car is 12 cylinders you couldn't bring back to the U.S. without all this conversion. So I decided to have the car delivered in Zurich. Fritz's brother lived there, so he picked me up at the airport. I flew into Zurich and Kloten, and we're going from the airport to his house, where I was going to stay for one night. And we're following this BMW coupe, blue one, a Fior blue, with German export plates. I said to Rolf, Fritz's brother, I said, Rolf, that's my car. He said, no, this car exists quite a bit in Europe, so in Switzerland, and I'm sure it's not your car. Well, inside the car, we're stuck right behind it in Zurich traffic. Right beside, inside was the man was driving, and there was a woman in the passenger seat, another woman in the back, and they're all sort of carrying on, moving around, laughing, talking. Anyway, spent the night there. The next day we go to the delivery location, which is a BMW dealer just outside of Zurich. There's the car, and it's the same car that we had been following in traffic. This woman comes out and introduces herself. She's going to be the delivery agent to me. Before she can open her mouth, Rolf is going at her. How could you be like that? My customer here from America is very upset because you were carrying on in the car. And so they're going back and forth in high German, and that's when I decided maybe I'll study German. In any case, that ended, and so we were looking at the car and we're walking around it, and she's explaining all the features. And of course, I'm familiar with the car. We had a few of them in Cohasset, and I'm really just looking at the cosmetic condition to make sure there's no scratches or dents or anything like that. As she's talking, she suddenly stops and she says something like, I can't believe why you Americans, I don't understand why you Americans buy this car. You're not interested in all the beautiful features of it. And with that, Rolf started up again in high German, and they're going back and forth, I'm sure, casting aspersions on either of their cultures. And finally, I just got in the car and I drove it out of the delivery area in the parking lot outside, and that finally stopped them. So everything was okay with the car. We said goodbye, and I thanked Rolf, and I thanked the lady, and off it went, headed to Maranello. Well, I arrived at the factory, which I had been to before, and it's just a brick building, and you really can't see anything. There's no cars parked in front, and there was no activity. So I went inside, and I had contacted them. They were expecting me. And I met a Mr. DeFranco, very nice guy, different than Mr. Albino I had met a few years before. And so we talked, and he knew that I was there to check on this particular car. Pete Winsberg had ordered this kind of a French racing blue, beautiful blue car. So he took me into his office, and no more medieval manuscripts. This was a computer printout of cars that were being produced. And so we looked through the printout, and sure enough, there it said Canetti, Garthwaite was the importer at this time, and Auto House, and the blue car. But it was steel. So I said to him, well, I understand there was still some fiber. He goes, well, no, they're all steel now. So I said, okay, it's a steel car. And then I said, well, would it be possible to get, I had asked if I could get a tour of the factory because that hadn't happened before. He said, yes, of course. Yes, let's go. So we toured through the factory, and there's a hum coming from inside, the engines, the cars. I'm saying, am I going to see Mr. Ferrari? And no, he wasn't there that day. But I had a nice tour. One of the most interesting places was the dynamometer room, the dyno room, where they were testing engines. Ferrari tested each engine before they put it in the car. Then they tested the car and with the engine in it, and of course then we got it. We tested it also. So there was quite a few steps before it ended up with the customer, and the customer was always very pleased because the car would perform perfectly. But what was really interesting to me about the dyno room, they had a V8 in there from one of the 308s, and they were testing the horsepower, which I think was about 240 at the time, US spec car. And what I discovered was that when they said it had 240 horsepower, what the factory really meant was that it had at least 240 horsepower. So some of the cars had like more and substantially more. None had less, but some had more. And that's why we had always wondered why some cars felt faster than others. And that was the reason. They were putting up more power. So it was a great visit. Enjoyed it very much. Thanked everybody. And I was off. So actually I was going to the south of France, to the coast where I had been a couple of times, and visit some old haunts and Took the BMW down there. It ran very well. Didn't seem quite as fast as the 30 CS that it had replaced, but it was a nice car. Spent a couple of days there, and on the way back, I was heading up to Paris in France, and I was going to take, on my way back to the U.S. I was going along about 90, 80, 90, you know. There's not too many fast French cars, because occasionally Porsche or big Mercedes or something. And suddenly I saw a headlight coming up behind me. And I had heard that the police on the auto route had motorcycles. So I kind of slowed down a little bit, even although I thought there was no speed limit. Suddenly this BMW motorcycle comes up beside me. And it was not a policeman, it was a rider with leathers. And he goes by me, and I said, well, you know, I don't like that. So I sped up, and he sped up, and I had the BMW flat out at 120, 122. That's all it would do. It was not as fast as the 30 CS. And of course, I was braking it in the right way. That's how you're supposed to brake in fast cars, is drive them fast. So we sort of played a little cat and mouse, and he was a good driver, a good rider. I mean, we were really good. And then it started to rain. I said, now I've got him, because he was riding an R100 RS BMW, which I had spent a lot of time with, and I knew that in the rain, watch out. Didn't slow him down a bit. And the BMW coupe I'm in, the wipers are useless over 100, so it was kind of a little bit of tag going on. And then we approached one of these restaurants that are on top of the auto route. You know, you can access it going either way. And he kind of motions. He pulls up beside me, motions to go into the parking lot. So he did. And he gets off the bike and takes off his helmet. And I get out of the car. We introduced each other. His name's Pierre, of course. And he turns out he was a motorcycle mechanic in Nice, in southern France, and he was going up to outside of Paris to visit his parents. So we went inside. We had a coffee and a croissant, and my French was okay, so he didn't speak much English at all. But we had a good time. It was a great memory. So I get back to the U.S., and I had asked the factory about the possibility of bringing in the Boxer or the 400. He said, no, that wasn't going to happen. He didn't think. So Fritz and I did some more investigation. We decided Italy was the place to find a car. And so we went to the customer of ours was an international attorney, and he had said, Bob, if you're ever trying to buy something in Europe, do any business, let me know. We'll handle it for you or help assist you with it. We found the dealer in Rome, Crepaldi, who the lawyer through Baker & McKenzie, another law firm, found the car and said it was available. It was a red one. Red with black leather, and the price was okay. So we made all the arrangements to get it. And Fritz and Alice decided to go over. It was in December of 1977. They were going to go over and inspect the car and then pay for it. And the dealer didn't want a wire transfer. He didn't want a bank draft. He wanted cash. Well, not lira and dollars, but something like American Express travelers checks. So that's what we gave. That's what we gave Fritz and Alice, and they went. They went over, stayed at the Hotel Hassler, a nice hotel there in Rome. The next day, Alice has got all the money in her purse, and they're heading over to the dealership. They're walking over because it was pretty close. Suddenly, this motorcycle, the two guys on it, comes up beside them. The guy in the back grabs Alice's purse and took off with the purse. She tried to hold on. She's a strong woman. She had been an Olympic athlete. Couldn't do it. Let it go, and there goes the bag, there goes the money, there goes their passports, not even the American ones, they had Swiss passports also. It was a real bonanza for the thief.